Hello friends, welcome to yet another session on essay perspectives. The topic for today is love takes off masks that we fear we cannot live without and no we cannot live within. Friends, as always, I have a personal appeal. Third edition of my book Ethics, Integrity and Aptitude has unfortunately been pirated. Pirated copies are of very low paper and print quality. So original copies have to be bought. I urge all of you to do that. Original copies can be bought from the seller Arvind India on Flipkart and from the seller Affordable on Amazon. Thank you. Just like any other essay, this essay also can be conceptualized as being made of various components and subcomponents. First, we would introduce the topic, then we would discuss about the essence of the topic, then we would delve upon the issue why do we have masks and how love ensures removal of those masks. Would love always take off masks? And then we would conclude. Friends, as soon as I read this topic, I was reminded of the story of Chanda Zaveri. See, Chanda Zaveri is a millionaire entrepreneur in US today, but I just want to narrate her compelling story. Chanda Zaveri was born in Calcutta in I think 1970s Calcutta. Right from childhood, she was a bright student and she wanted to win Nobel Prize. So that her aim was to become a scientist and win her Nobel Prize. So she had lot of love for science, lot of love for achievement and progress in her life. But being born into a wealthy, affluent Marwari family, the orthodoxical society had set plans for her. She had to finish her graduation, get married and settle in life. But her love for being a scientist was so deep, so intense that she did not want to get into the usual trap. One day, while coming back from her college, she found an American lady. She found an American lady. Collapsing on the road. So, because of heat stroke, she took care of the lady, and thus that American couple became good friends of her. They shared her contact details. The postal details, phone numbers, etc., etc. Then it was her. They kept in touch for quite some time. Then she finished her graduation. It was time for her to take a very tough call in her life. She was being forced to get married, but now she decided to flee the country with the help of this American couple. So that's how she initially, she had no money. She could not inform her parents. She could not borrow. Nothing she could do. Only all that she had was one pair of diamond earrings. So she mustered her courage, sold off those diamond rings, bought a ticket and landed in Boston initially. So later, she started working as maid, domestic help in different places. So then later somehow she impressed her her master, and somehow she got about $30,000 and she shifted herself to US, and she joined California Institute of Technology to do her masters in molecular biology. So then, her love for this Nobel Prize, love for being a scientist was glowing more and more brightly day and day after. So then she decided to get enrolled herself under Nobel laureate Linus Pauling. So, but she went and approached him and she wanted to work under him, but there was no vacancies in her lab. Then the Linus Pauling was the only vacancy that was available was to clean the petri dishes in the lab. So she happily accepted. She just wanted to be around the Nobel laureate to understand how scientists work. Then with his, she won over his heart. Then she was able to. She was taught how to make peptides by none other than the Nobel laureate Linus Pauling himself. So then she decided to. Then she invented her own actigens. Then finally, she has now set up her own company that manufactures actigens and peptides required for beauty cosmetics products. So in fact, it is. It is happy to note that the Fair and Handsome being manufactured and marketed by Imami has her antigen as the primary ingredient. Okay, now today she is a millionaire, she has become successful, etc., etc. Her compelling story, that motivational and emotional part aside, how does that story of Chanda Zaveri is getting linked to the topic? Friends, at the time of completion of graduation, Chanda Zaveri had two options, two choices. Choice one was to cave in to the pressure of her parents and her joint family, get married, get settled in Calcutta. But she knew that that was not her heart wanted. Correct? Because had she got settled by marrying someone, she would have to, throughout her life, live with the mask of a happy housewife. Though deep inside she wanted to become a scientist and win Nobel Prize, but her burning desire would have got masked. She would have to pretend to be a happy housewife. She would have to pretend to be a caring mother. She would have to pretend to be a loving wife. So that's how she had to live with that mask throughout her life. Then, in order to impress her husband, she had to act as if she was happy being a housewife. But deep inside, she always had this restlessness that she could not become what she wanted to become. So thus she had to live with the mask that she feared she could not live without, and that mask she knew she could not live within. Correct? Then what was that one thing that enabled her to take off that mask? It was her love for development, love for progression, love for her goal, love for her destiny, love for her heart's calling. Correct? Okay, hope I have made sense. Let's move on. Friends, after introducing the topic, it is time for us to delve deep into the essence of the topic. So the topic contains these keywords. Let's explore their meanings. First is love. What is love? Love is an intense, deep feeling and affection towards person, an issue, anything. Correct? So when you have a deep affection towards a person, you call it love. When you have a deep affection towards a pet, you call it love. When you have a deep affection towards a food, you call it love. When you have a deep affection, attachment towards an issue, towards an idea, ideology, that is also called love. So thus, the word love should not be interpreted in its narrow sense of the deep affection towards only the individuals. So that is the narrowest meaning that we can ascribe to the word love. So let's have that clarity. In the beginning, in the essay also we should make that clarity. We should give that clarity in the beginning itself so that it would set the proper and the right stage for essay in the coming paragraphs. Correct? So love is deep affection, deep intense feeling towards a person, a pet, a food, an issue, or an ideology, or anything. Basically, it's a deep and intense affection towards anything. Correct? So that is love. In the case of Chanda Zaveri, it was the deep feeling she had, deep attachment she had towards her heart's calling to become a scientist and win Nobel Prize. Okay. Then comes masks. What are masks? We all of us know, right? Masks. So, but exactly here, mask means pretension. Mask means forced identity. There are two dimensions to this mask. One is mask implies pretension. You try to pretend what you are not. You try to pretend to be someone else, not yourself. So that is the first meaning of mask. The second meaning of mask is forced identity. That means someone else will thrust upon some false identity onto you. then you would have to accept that forced identity and try to live with that identity. Correct? So, thus masks has the term phrase mask has two meanings here. One is pretension which you do on your own. Second is forced identity which is thrust upon you by someone else. Okay. Then we have to understand the meaning of masks that we fear we cannot live without and masks that we know we cannot live within. So, first, masks that we fear we cannot live without. That means there are some pretensions, there are some forced identities. We presume ourselves, we think that they are very much essential, without that we cannot live. Those such pretensions and such forced identities are what we call the masks that we fear we cannot live without. We cannot live without. So we try to continue to hold those masks. Despite only because of one reason, because without those masks we think our survival is in peril. Okay. Then masks that we know we cannot live within, second one. But these are the pretensions and these are the forced identities that don't let us live happily, that that don't let us live with peace of mind, with poise, with contentment. Correct? So here we have to understand the word significance of and in this entire essay topic. So it is actually connecting these masks with and, not with or. So then what do you mean by that? That means here this essay topic is referring to those pretensions or forced identities that we falsely think that they are essential for our survival, yet we try to adjust with them with unwillingly. Correct? So I think let me rephrase it this way. So that means it is referring to those pretensions and forced identities which we think are extremely essential, and so because of that notion that they are critical, that they are indispensable, so we try to hang on to them, but we don't try to hang on to them happily, because deep inside we have this restlessness. We know that we cannot live with this with these pretensions and forced identities, yet we try to hang on to them unwillingly. So this is what the significance of and. Now let us, from all the above discussion, now let us try to understand, decipher the meaning of the entire statement. The entire statement implies that a deep feeling or affection towards a person or an objective would enable or empower an individual to get unshackled from unwilling yet falsely thought out pretensions or forced identities one is carrying. Correct? So this is the crux of the entire statement. Hope you have understood the meaning, friends. Now let's move on. Now, after understanding the meaning of the essay statement, now it is important for us to analyze as to why do we have masks? Why do we pretend? Why are we carrying the forced identities thrust upon us? Correct? So the first thing is to impress person in the dominant position. Why is that so? We try to carry the mask because we want to impress the person in the dominant position, so that he would dole out gifts to us, benefits to us. Correct? So this is what happens mostly in an employer-employee relationship. Employee seeks to impress the employer, seeks to pretend as if he is very much obedient to the employer. Many times in the internal meetings of the company, though though the executives do not concur with the views of the CEO, even then they are forced to, so many times they pretend as if they are appreciating the views of the CEO, just because they want to impress the CEO. Also, there are cases where these executives try to understand the tastes. They try to understand the preferences of the CEO and then try to act as if they also share the same tastes, same preferences. Only because to strike a rapport, only because to be in good books of the CEO, so that whenever it is time for picking someone for promotion or picking someone for some foreign travel, exposure visit, etc., because they should be the ones who are chosen. So that is the psyche. Next comes to escape the wrath of person in dominant position. There are two ways. Sometimes the person in the dominant position has to be impressed so that he would dole out benefits. Sometimes if you are afraid that if you are what you are, if you don't pretend to be what you are, then you would invite the wrath of the dominant person in the dominant position. So in order to ward off such wrath, you try to act as if you are conforming to his views, as if you are appreciating him. So the best example is, recently I was reading a book, Things Cannot Be So Bad That They Can't Get Worse. So it's about the collapse of Venezuelan economy. In that, actually, the author says, the Venezuelan president Hugo Chavez was actually holding a weekly telephonic call with all the citizens. So he became creative and he started holding this program in various places, in factories, in pasture lands, in dairy farms, etc. Then whenever the prime minister, whenever Hugo Chavez chose a place to hold this program, immediately the factories that were dysfunctional used to be projected as if they are functional. Suddenly some repairs work could be made, and suddenly the factory would be made to run for a short while. So in order to similar is the case with dairy farms, where there were no cattle also. Many cattle were put in order to give impression to Hugo Chavez that the dairy farms was running well. So why was this happening? Because most of the officials in the government were afraid that if Hugo Chavez got to know the reality, then he would thrash them, he would take a serious action against them. So that's how sometimes you try to pretend to be someone else, try to do something else, only because to avoid the wrath of person in the dominant position. The third reason why a person tends to have masks is to be acceptable to others. So this mostly happens when a rural student comes to an urban setting, urban college, where though he doesn't like pasta, though he doesn't like pizza, burger, yet in order to be acceptable to the new crowd, he tries to act as if he likes all those things. He tries to dress differently, etc. So this is, though deep inside he doesn't like pasta, he likes only dal chawal, but yet he pretends as if he is a big fan of pastas, pizzas, burgers and other continental food. So that is the another issue. Then comes to conform to standard notions. See, society would have some standard notions always. So in order to there is invisible pressure on any individual to conform to those standard notions. So this also psychologically puts a person in a spot to have a mask and pretend as if he also accepts those standard notions. Then lastly, this lack of confidence and self-esteem is what makes a person mandates, if I may say so, a person to have a mask. Friends, if you observe, the only reason why Dalits in India or the depressed classes were depressed so hard in India, or blacks were depressed in America, was only because they lacked self-confidence, they lacked self-esteem. They were tuned to, I mean, though they felt humiliated, though they felt angered, I mean, deep within by all the humiliations inflicted upon them, yet they did not have the self-confidence, nor did they have the self-esteem to raise voice against the same. So that's why they had to pretend to be happy with the social notions, yet they boiled from within. Now, after understanding as to why would anyone have masks, then it is important for us to understand how love helps removal of such masks. See, the first thing is love implies passion. Passion translates into efforts. So once you work very hard, once you become indispensable, once you become a man of content, man of competence, then it becomes unnecessary for anyone to impress anyone else. Correct? So, I mean, see, I have to impress my boss to get a promotion only when my competence is in question. But if my competence, if I am very much competent and if my work only speaks, then I need not have to separately impress boss. Boss, I mean, promotions, etc., would fall in their way. So, when will this competence gets proved? Only when you love the job. I am reminded of this famous quote of Confucius: if you love your job, you need not have to work for a single day. Correct? So, thus, if you love your job, you need not have to have a mask because you work hard, your hard work brings you recognition, rewards, everything. But if you don't love your work, then you will not be able to perform well, then you will have to have mask. So thus love would take off mask. Second, love melts stone hearts. Friends, as all of us are aware, it is I mean the power of love. Love can create sympathy. Love can melt even stone hearts. Even the hardliners can be moved by deep and pure love. The best example is Buddha and Angulimala. Angulimala was a dacoit. He was a hardliner. Everybody before Angulimala pretended to fear him, pretended to cave in to his ferocity or savage behavior, whatever. So then they used to surrender themselves before them. So they used to carry that mask. But what Buddha did? Out of pure love, he changed Angulimala into a saint. Correct? So that is what love. Buddha also had two options. He could have chosen to have a mask and then move on. But he did not choose that way, and he used the weapon, most potent weapon called love, to convert him. Correct? Then love evokes respect. When respect becomes the foundation, then there is hardly any scope for having a mask. If a boss starts loving his employees, or then the boss could command their respect. Once he commands their respect, they would not be wearing any mask before him. They would be what they are. They would speak their mind, and that leads to betterment of organization also. Then love nullifies physical factors. Friends, the only reason why we try to how mask is manifested, it is through physical factors, right? I try to dress the way someone else expects me to do because I want to impress them. Correct? So thus, if there is love, then this emotion of love nullifies the physical factors. Correct? See, let us take a very popular, the example that most of us can relate. A boy or a girl tries to impress his or her lover or someone else. Actually, what they do, they try to dress well, they try to hide their physical deficiencies or whatever. So let us say a person has a squint eye, he wants to impress a girl, maybe he starts wearing goggles to impress her, to not to reveal. So that's how we try to pretend, right? So but as progresses, when the pure love blossoms between two hearts, then perhaps this physical factors becomes a nullity. Then the life goes on. Then the need for pretension doesn't exist at all. Correct? So then love gives you courage. Love gives you courage. A deep, intense feeling towards a community gives you courage to fight for that community. That is the whole reason why Nelson Mandela fought for rights of Africans. That is the whole reason why Mahatma Gandhi ji launched Harijan movement. So when you have deep love towards a particular community, you get courage to stand for them, to fight for them. Correct? So also, when you start loving yourself, see, love oneself is also important. When you start loving yourself, your self-esteem boosts. Your courage becomes, you become more and more courageous to raise your voice. Only if you don't love yourself, then perhaps you would take anything and you would pretend and you would just move on in life. After all this discussion, friends, we have convincingly argued that love is very essential to take off those pretensions and forced identities. But friends, do you think would love always help you take off those masks? Or would love be sufficient to take off those masks? The answer is no, friends. Why? Because sometimes conflict, rebellion or revolution are needed to take off those masks. See, mostly this is more so when the mask refers to a forced identity. See, when I told you now, mask refers to pretensions and forced identities. Pretension is done on your own. Forced identities are thrust upon you. In the former case, that you are pretending on your own. When you pretend on your own, then perhaps love would easily help you to do away with that pretension and be what you are. Okay, that is a very potent weapon. But when that pretension is, when that mask is nothing but the identity that is thrust upon you by someone else, you can live with your real identity only when you raise against the person who has thrust upon that identity on you. So then when will you be able to do that? You will be able to do that only when the other person gets moved by your love. But in most of the cases, the other person would not get moved by your love or your intense feeling, your goodwill, etc., etc. At that time, it becomes essential for you to raise against that person, that community, and then ensure that those forced identities are thrown away. Correct? So that is the whole reason for civil war in America. Correct? So with love, they could not win the equality. So they had to fight. So why would this happen? Because of the selfish interest. See, if the person in the dominant position who has thrust upon the identities onto others, then that person, if that identity had to be removed, it would compromise his selfish interest. Correct? See, suppose there is, even in the ancient India, the upper caste and lower caste scenario, the upper caste people had actually thrust upon this forced identity on untouchables that they were weak, they were not fit to enter temple, they were not fit to perform sacrifices, etc., etc., etc. Why all these things was serving them a purpose, some purpose was being served, because they were getting labor to work in their field, they were getting someone who would listen to them, and etc., etc. But now, these persons, that forced identity that these were weak, these were these were least blessed by the God, etc., etc. That forced identity had to be removed. Then this lower caste people, this weaker section, also had to be treated on par with the upper caste people. Then they would not be able to get work done through these people through pittance. They would not be able to mislead these weaker sections. So thus their selfish interest would get compromised. So that is the whole reason why there was caste conflict. So same is the case in America also, between blacks and whites. So thus always love would not help. Sometimes in order to take those masks out, this is more so in case of masks that are a result of a forced identities, false identities forced upon individuals, then rebellion, conflict would be the solution. Correct? We can take another example also, friends. Let us take a rural orthodox setting of an Indian family where the wife is made she is given a forced false identity that she is subservient to her husband, she is obedient to her husband. So that identity of being dependent upon husband, that identity of her having no existence or identity of her own except the identity which she would borrow from her husband, then at that point of time, if the husband is good, he starts treating her with respect, then it's okay. But in most of the cases, husband would not get moved by the love, would not treat her with respect, because if she starts thinking herself to be equal, she would not listen to him, she would not do household chores, she would not do all the menial jobs, whatever. So in such a scenario, in most of the cases, the wife would try to would be forced to live with that mask of an obedient, subservient wife, though deep within her self-respect is very badly hit. Then what she would do? She would rebel one day, she would take divorce, she would walk out of marital relationship. That's it, right? So thus, love is not always enough. Then after all this elaborate discussion, it is time for conclusion. We can safely conclude that human beings are forced to carry unwilling yet falsely thought out to be critical identities with them. These identities first have to be tried to be removed through love. If not, they would automatically get removed through rebellion or a conflict in the long run. Okay, thank you, friends. I am actually not feeling well, friends, so some throat infection and all, so hence video has gotten delayed by a day. I am sorry. So happy preparation, all the best.